Have you ever wondered why your photos don't have enough likes? How do you get 10x your likes? How do you get 100 likes? How do you get 1,000 likes? How do you get 10,000 likes or more? So recently I got a comment. Somebody just wrote it to me. You could probably get 1,000 likes for a shit photo you post because you are Tin Man Lee. I take it as a compliment. I don't know when I suddenly become the Tin Man Lee, but anyway, so today I want to share with you how to get more likes. So let's get right into it. Going to an exotic places, sometimes it costs you $10,000, $20,000, and then buying the best camera and lenses can cost you $40,000, $50,000. The flight ticket can be so expensive, it costs $5,000 to $10,000. So basically you are spending 2 weeks in a place and come back with $100,000 less. And then you may have some once a lifetime encounter of birds or animals, and then you're so excited, you post a photo, and then you get 20 likes. And then like some morons like Tin Man Lee would post a photo of a raven and he got 2,000 likes or something, and it's just so unfair, right? I totally understand that. And today I'm going to explain to you why, because it took me years to find out the reason. With more and more photographers doing Instagram, Facebook, it's getting more and more difficult to get likes. You may have different opinions about whether it's good to get likes or not, but I think it is one of the best feelings when your photos are able to make a difference in other people's lives. And the best indication is that they react to your photos, they like your photos, they comment on your photos. I still remember one year I received, I forgot if it is an email or a Facebook message from someone, a photographer that I don't even know. So she wrote me, she said, "It is not fair." And she was referring to a photo that won the grand prize of a prestigious photo contest. She said, "I don't know, I don't understand. I have much better photo than this one. The bird is doing the same thing. It's just because the winning photographer of that contest, because she's just famous, she has a lot of followers, and it's just unfair. My photos are much better." So I said, "Do you have any of your photos?" When I look at the photos that she referred to as better than the one that won the grand prize of that photo contest, it was very clear to me why her photos didn't win. I can understand why she is unhappy, because that happened to me before too. Just a few years back, I was exactly the same. I was completely new to photography, have no idea how to take a good photos, but I just have this passion. So first, I have to admit that being famous or having a lot of fame, for example, if you are a National Geographic photographer, then you are already famous. And of course, then when you come into social media, when you post a photo, of course you can get a lot of likes. Same thing for me after winning a few photo contests and having a lot of recognition, publication, and stuff like that. I have amassed a number of followers. So when you post a photo, you have a much stronger advantage of getting more likes. But that's only one of the reasons. But really the second reason of why some photographers didn't really get a lot of likes. How many of you have watched a movie called Jiro's Dream of Sushi? God, my English is too bad. Jiro's Dream of Sushi. This is one of my favorite movies, and it's about a chef, an owner of a restaurant, and his journey into mastering the craft of making a sushi. And you would think, what? Sushi is just like a slice of fish, right? For example, like a slice of raw tuna on top of some sticky rice, and then you just put it together and then dip it into wasabi and soy sauce, and that's it, right? So what makes a sushi one of the best, if not the best in the world, versus the sushi that you can get in any of the strip malls? And if you look at the rating in Yelp, maybe it's like a 1-star restaurant. Like, how can that be that much difference with just simple things like sushi? I was just obsessed into understanding about this mastery of art. Have you ever been to a concert of classical music? I have been to a performance by Lang for the piano, And what is the difference between, for example, a typical person who can play Moonlight Sonata versus Lang, right? Both of them play the keys perfectly. So what really are this difference? I finally have an epiphany. To get a sharp photo of a flying bird that used to be very difficult before in the 90s or just 10, 15 years ago. But now with mirrorless camera, the eye tracking, most of the people can get a photo of a sharp flying bird. You can imagine if you are posting a photo in social media, you're submitting a photo to photo contests, you are competing. Unfortunately, I have to use the word compete, but there are tens of thousands of other photographers who have very similar photos, all very sharp and those. So all of a sudden, when the competition is so strong, it is not the same as back in the 70s when you have a permit. If you work for BBC, Nat Geo and all this, you are the only person to be in that place, right? And when you get a photo, that is very unique, very special. Of course, also the photographer had to endure a lot of the hardship to get those photos. But now the game is very different. So the main thing is to realize what makes a photo different and what makes it stands out. So I remember a quote. So the quote is, at the end of the day, people won't remember what you said or did. They will remember how you make them feel, by Maya Angelou. Do you agree that photography is a kind of art? If it is art, it is about transferring of your emotion from yourself through the art to the viewers, right? Even if you get a photo that is super sharp, technically perfect, but if the photos couldn't make people feel something, then the photos will become like the other 90% of the photos and you not get the likes. Ever since I understand that principle and focus on the feeling of the photos, it changes everything. Whenever I post a photo, even when I didn't have any followers, I get a lot of likes. When I post the photos in different forums, different groups, when nobody really knows about me, they react to it and then they get a lot of likes. When I taught the same principle to my students, they were also telling me about how viral they went and those. So there's really a formula there. To make people feel your photo, there are two kinds of emotion. The feeling of annoyance. The other one is the feeling of really engaging. There is the negative feeling, and then there is also the positive feeling. And if you are able to minimize or reduce all this negative feeling of the photos and increase the positive ones, then people can really feel strongly to your photos. So what is this negative thing? So for example, if you go to Lang's piano performance in Hollywood Bowl, where I live in Los Angeles, that's where I went to see him. If where you were sitting at, people were just chatting in front of you, people are just talking in the phone, and then people are just walking around and create a lot of noise, and you couldn't even hear clearly what the performance, that's what? Is that annoyance or is that engaging? That's the annoyance in that performance, right? So if you apply it to photography, what are some of the annoyances, right? In one of my videos, I'll put in the link below, I talk about the metering and why it is important. And one of the things I said that a lot of people didn't pay attention to, the blown out highlights. Sometimes in the edge of the fur or some of the feathers of the birds, when they are lighter color, they will have this blown out highlight. Right? So blown out highlights is almost like you go to a restaurant and part of the fish dish is burned out. So burnt food, and it is really annoying. So if your photos have those, or if there are branches and like tall grasses blocking the face of the animal, blocking the eyes, or like sticking out from the back of the animals, there are branches and stuff. Those are annoying things. What you need to do is to wait for the moment when the animals is in the clear and not with the branches and trees and stuff like that. I actually got some other photographers in my trip that was so angry with me. So they would say, Tianman, why do you keep on focusing on waiting for those moments? But this is nature. Nature is just like all these tall grasses and stuff, just accept it and stuff like that. Let me tell you something. It really bothered me for the longest time is like a lot of the time when you're in the field, right? You see the animal, you see the surrounding, everything seems to be perfect, and then you were like nailing the shots. And when you got back home and you look at the photos, suddenly all this distraction shows up, and I said, that is so weird. I was absolutely sure that when I was in that moment taking the photos, it was not like that. It was not like that. I didn't remember all these things. So I was in my graduate school at the time, and I took a class in computer science called 3D vision. So it taught about how humans look at things and how we create this 3D scene in our brain. There is something called stereo images, and you can search those details in Google. I just want to tell you the main idea of how our two eyes act very differently in the field versus when a viewer is looking at our photos. So what is this difference? What is this difference that causes our photos to suck when we see it in the computer? We have two eyes. When we look at a scene, a moment like an animal or a bird, and since we are always a little bit moving, there's nobody who can completely stay still, not moving even 1 millimeter when we are taking the photos, when we see the birds or animals, right? And sometimes we are in a vehicle, sometimes the animal is moving and all this kind of stuff. So the concept of 3D vision is anytime when we move our face just a tiny little bit or changing the perspective just a little bit, and then when we're looking at the same animal, just because of that, there is two corresponding images in our brain that is a little bit different in terms of the perspective, right? Our brain will automatically look for these corresponding points and create a three-dimensional scene in front of us. For example, if there is a branch behind the animal that is walking by, and because we have this 3D vision in our brain from the processing of our visual cortex or whatever, we automatically separate those branches from the animal. And what we see is a three-dimensional scene in our eyes. And then we thought that we got the photo. But when the photo becomes a two-dimensional image, and when the viewer sees it, they don't have the luxury of what we have in the field to have the movement of the stereo images or whatever it's called. So they don't get that separation. Our role as a photographer is to think about the outcome first. Think about that the viewers would have no way to separate that. So our goal in the field is to make sure that we don't have those components that are being stacked together from a three-dimensional scenery into 2D that make it an annoyance, like the noises of Lang Lang's performance or like a burnt food. And so finding an angle of waiting for a moment that don't have all this distraction would be the number one thing. And also like blown out highlights is another thing. There's a lot of all sorts of those distractions that you want to minimize first. And then you can focus on the engaging part of the image. And what is that engaging part is, for example, one technique I can show you is, so our brain always have something that is like some interior and exterior thing. What I mean by that is like in the exterior, we see the animal on the image or the birds on the image. But then on the interior, our eyes is also processing brightness, colors, contrast, leading lines and patterns and all this kind of thing. That is not related to the animal themselves, right? So in order for us to realize what is really going on in the viewer's brain, one idea is when we look at our photo that we're going to post, we try to move our phone further away from us so that the image looks smaller, or you can zoom out in your editing viewing software to look at the image in a much smaller scale and detach yourself from the animal or the moment and think about the brightness, the contrast, and where is the highest contrast area, because our eyes, the viewer's eyes, are always drawn to the highest contrast area. It is always drawn to the brightest area, for example, or the area with the warmest color temperature area. Once you realize that, and then you see that, oh, this is the highest contrast area, but this is not what I want the viewers to look at. For example, like there are two foxes, right? The mother fox and the pup was playing and the pup was touching the snout of the mother, right? But then you have something that is a lot brighter or higher contrast in another area of the image. The viewers are not going to be paying attention to the story that you want to tell them, but their eyes are being drawn to some other area. That photo may be a failure. That photo may not be able to convey that engaging feeling to it. Is it Newton's second law? God, my physics is all gone. The theory is an object that is stationary, right? If there is no external force, it's gonna stay stationary. But then once you push it, once there's an external force, it will start to move. And then if there's another external force adding to it, then it will start to accelerate, right? So it's the same thing for photography. You have to think about how to create this kind of external forces in your photo to really drive the eyes of the viewers into where you want them to look at in the photo. So it is like very fascinating the more I understand and learn about those kinds of things. So I'm going to really start a series. Is it called series of more episodes of this topic to share with you more about that? But really, one thing that I think is so one big discovery is if our photos don't have that kind of removing the annoyance and increasing the engagement feeling, the photos will just be having these very low lights and low views and not winning any awards. But once you execute it perfectly, the result would be completely different, and it really changes my life. So I wanted to share with you about why it is important to pay more attention to the feeling of the photos. So let me see if I missed anything. Yeah, a lot of the photos already have 90% of what it takes to be a good photo. A piece of sushi, as long as the fish is fresh and the rice is decently sticky, you have a decent piece of sushi. But what makes it Jiro's sushi versus the Michelin star sushi versus this decent or mediocre sushi is something that is very subtle. And same for photography. You might not realize how close you were with a photo that has 30 likes to 30,000 likes. It's all these little things that will create quantum leap for your photos. So yeah, if you don't really look into that feeling of the photo, there is a danger that you keep going into these expensive trips, spending a lot of times into waiting for the animals. But then if you keep doing the same thing, it is just very difficult to have a big change, have a big shift of the photography. So I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy this video, definitely check out another video where I talk about the 5 mistakes of editing. Because if you can avoid some of those mistakes, it can also minimize that annoying feeling of some of the photos. So anyways, talk to you next time.